The $500,000 trust that was supposed to be free. What my sister-in-law discovers will shock you. Rachel could hardly breathe as she clutched the dusty envelope, its faded ink a stark contrast against the golden hues of autumn outside her attic window. Week after week of perseverance as a dedicated nurse and single mother had led her to this moment, and yet exhilaration twisted into anxiety. A hidden family trust? $500,000? Her mind raced, the promises they could bring, but at what cost? In a small town where everyone knew everyone, the shadow of her late husband's family loomed large, a reminder of the judgment she faced during those suffocating family gatherings full of curdled smiles. As Rachel sorted through the crumbling paper, she could almost hear Karen's condescending laugh slicing through her resolve. The tension between them had always been palpable, an invisible thread woven into the fabric of their shared family. The last time she had dared to confront it, at the funeral, was a nightmare of sideways glances and whispered comments that left her breathless. Rachel's hand trembled as she read the stipulations attached to the trust. Unwavering loyalty to the McAllister name. Could she really bend her principles for her children's future? Heart racing, she braced herself against the attic wall, the weight of her decision heavy on her shoulders. In moments of clarity, she remembered the entries in her husband's old journal, hidden away beneath their bed, each page revealing snippets of a past fraught with secrets, betrayals between family members that had left wounds she never fully understood. As she rifled through her own memories, the anger and resentment surged. Hadn't she fought hard enough to carve a life for her children? Did she now have to navigate the treacherous waters of her in-laws' expectations? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The thrill of potential security quickly turned into dread as she envisioned a future built on whispered betrayals. She felt the muscles in her neck tighten, her breath growing shallow. A confrontation with Karen bubbled in her mind. Suddenly, her resolve felt like an anchor, dragging her deeper into uncertainty. If she chose to embrace the trust, would that send a clear message to Karen and her family that she was willing to sacrifice who she was for their acceptance? But what about my children? The thought of their needs tormented her as she remembered the late-night shifts, the whispered prayers, the pride in their laughter. Rachel glanced at the small wooden chest across the room where her husband had once stored cherished family memories. It was a vessel of both love and disappointment, just like the trust she now held. Closing her eyes, she felt a storm brewing within her, a backlash of loyalty and self-doubt. The truth prickled at her. Uncovering the past might only tear her family apart further. With each beat of her heart, the stakes continued to rise. As she prepared to confront Karen, the air thickened with possibilities, and in that moment, she realized she stood on a precipice. What if she fought for her family legacy and only unleashed chaos? What path would she choose when confrontational truths loomed in the distance, threatening to reshape the life she fought so hard to build? The storm of thoughts collided in Rachel's mind as she stood in the attic, the weight of the envelope heavy in her hands. Each breath felt like a gamble, and decision time was drawing ever closer. She could ignore the trust and continue fighting for her children's future on her own terms, or embrace a lifeline that might also drown her morals. As she descended the creaky stairs, Rachel's heart raced at the idea of confrontation. Karen had always been a puppeteer in their family, manipulating feelings and relationships, her wicked laughter echoing through Rachel's memories. And now, it was time for Rachel to cut the strings. In the narrow hallway of their modest home, the paintings of happier times hung like silent witnesses. Memories of birthdays and laughter flickered through her mind, each moment a reminder of the resilience she had built since her husband's passing. The tangled mess of grief and betrayal had been a heavy cloak she wore, but now every fiber pulled tighter as her resolve began to transform. She stepped into the living room, where her 2 children were sprawled across the floor, tips of colored pencils scraping against construction paper. For them, life continued as usual, blissfully unaware of the tempest brewing. Their laughter echoed through the house, and for a moment, Rachel allowed herself to bask in that innocent tranquility. It reminded her why she fought, unconditional love for her children. But then the envelope on the table interrupted her moment of peace. It symbolized the intersection of her family's past and the future of her children. The struggle against Karen, the in-laws, and the desire for acceptance weighed heavily on her. Could confronting Karen lead to liberation or further entanglement in a family saga she longed to escape? Rachel grabbed her phone, fingers trembling as she waited for the dial tone to break the silence. It was time to gather her thoughts and arm herself with the tools needed for this inevitable conflict. Her sister, the only voice of reason in the storm, answered on the 4th ring. "Rachel, is everything okay?" Jess sounded genuine, concern threading through her tone. "No, Jess, it's not." Rachel paused, the code of trust between sisters breathing life into her courage. "I've found the trust. I don't know what to do." An unease crept into her voice, her usual confidence faltering. "What are the terms? What is it you're afraid of?" Jess's voice was calm, grounding amidst Rachel's turmoil. "It requires loyalty, unwavering loyalty to the McAllister name. I'm scared, Jess. If I accept, it feels like giving them the power to define me and my children," she admitted, a lump in her throat. "Have you thought about confronting them? Saying what you need?" Jess urged, pushing Rachel to the edge of her decision-making. "You're not just their daughter-in-law. You're your own woman, and these are your children. Holding on to my identity has been my strength, but is it selfish to want more for them, even at the cost of my own integrity?" The question hung heavy in air between them, full of undercurrents of betrayal and need. "I can't answer that, but I know your children look up to you, and they'll understand your choices. You'll have to decide what kind of legacy you wish to leave for them." Jess's words settled in Rachel's mind, stirring a once dormant fire. A burgeoning sense of determination crystallized within her as she realized confronting Karen might not mean surrender, but rather a reclamation of her own power. As she hung up, the seeds of resolve began taking shape. Rachel realized she needed to seek the truth in her husband's writings and possibly unearth more than just his struggles. They might reveal how strong she truly was and what weight the McAllister name carried on her own shoulders. With a clear direction ahead, she made her way back to the attic, ascending the stairwell with newfound determination. Each step felt lighter as she wove a plan in her mind, envisioning how the upcoming confrontation could open the door to a future she aimed to redefine. The gravity of her impending clash with Karen loomed ahead, but Rachel could see a flicker of change on the horizon. With each decision made towards empowerment, she would inch closer to unearthing not just the trust, but her own fortitude as well. And in that moment she realized, perhaps, the truth was the only form of loyalty worth fighting for. New revelations danced just beyond her reach, urging her to uncover deeper family secrets. The question loomed: what untold stories might her husband's journal reveal? And would they hold the key to confronting her sister-in-law once and for all? As Rachel entered the attic, the familiar smell of aged wood enveloped her, igniting a delicate blend of nostalgia and determination. The envelope still weighed heavily in her pocket, a silent reminder of her family's hidden complexities. Ignoring the dust motes that danced in the shafts of sunlight, she approached the box labeled Henry's Writings, her late husband's words calling to her like a whispered promise. With trembling hands, she lifted the lid, exposing a jumble of notebooks, loose pages, and various drafts that chronicled Henry's thoughts throughout their marriage. Each piece held fragments of his essence, but buried within was the key to understanding not just his struggles, but the legacy she now faced. The very act of skimming through the pages felt prayer-like, a search for clarity rather than closure. One entry in particular caught her eye. Family is not just blood, it is the bonds we create, the commitments we honor. With every word, Rachel felt her resolve solidifying. She had worked tirelessly to establish her own family and identity separate from the McAllisters, and now she had to forge a path that upheld both her integrity and her children's future. As she absorbed the weight of Henry's advice, she began to piece together her plan, one that didn't require giving in to Karen's demands. Rachel would confront Karen not from a place of submission, but from a position of strength, drawing on the wisdom her husband had imparted. The thought ignited a fire within her, encouraging her to redefine what loyalty truly meant. The next day, the confrontation loomed like a storm cloud, dark yet oddly charged with potential. Rachel could feel the energy in her bones as she prepared to face Karen. She wore a tailored blazer that represented her newfound confidence, her hair styled with purpose. The meticulousness of her appearance reflected not just a desire to be respected, but to embody the assertiveness she had unearthed. Arriving at the McAllister estate felt like stepping into a gladiator's arena, the opulence that had once intimidated her now starkly contrasting her burning determination. She felt the familiar prick of anxiety as she passed through the grand foyer, but with each calculated step, that discomfort transformed into anticipation. Rachel was ready to reclaim her narrative. Karen was seated at the long dining table, an image of self-assuredness, her smile a blade camouflaged beneath velvet. As the two locked eyes, the air shifted, thickening with unspoken tension. Rachel took a deep breath and allowed the weight of Henry's words to ground her. "Karen," she began, her voice steady, "we need to talk about the trust." A flicker of surprise crossed Karen's face, masking itself quickly beneath her practiced facade. "I see you've finally figured it out. I'm glad you've come to join our family in this matter," she said with a saccharine lilt. "There's nothing to join if it means losing myself in the process," Rachel interrupted, unfurling the envelope with a sense of finality. "This document doesn't define my worth or my children's future." The confrontation was electric, words hanging heavy as both women navigated the emotional battlefield. Rachel felt empowered with each passing moment. Confronting Karen meant standing for her family, not merely against her sister-in-law. "You think you can just walk in here and challenge everything we hold?" Karen shot back, the gloves coming off, her tone dripping with disdain. Rachel felt the heat rising, a whirlwind of self-doubt battling the fierce resolve she had cultivated. "I won't be intimidated any longer. You might have tried to dictate terms before, but I'm rewriting the narrative." The stakes had never been higher. Rachel's heart pounded, and for the first time she grasped the significance of her actions. She was not only defending her independence, she was constructing the legacy her children deserved. But as Karen's icy glare bore into her, creating a suffocating pressure, Rachel wondered if this was enough. Suddenly, the message on her phone vibrated in her pocket, a reminder. Jess had sent a text shortly before the confrontation began. "Don't forget who you are and what you're fighting for." Awash in new certainty, Rachel knew this was only the beginning. The deeper secrets hidden within Henry's writings were still to be uncovered, and they would give her the upper hand she needed. The voice of her past echoed in her mind. Would this confrontation prove to be the catalyst for her transformation, or would it stall her progress in reclaiming her family's legacy? Only time would reveal the next chapter in her quest for empowerment. But that question lingered like a shadow, refusing to let her rest. Rachel clenched her teeth, resolving to hold her ground against Karen's intimidating presence. The initial shock of the confrontation began to wane, giving way to a sense of clarity she hadn't expected. She knew at this moment she was no longer the passive participant in her own life. Staring at the woman who had so often called the shots, Rachel felt invigorated by the newfound strength she was tapping into. "Don't think for a second that you can rewrite history," Karen continued, her voice frosty but wavering slightly. "This trust is my family's legacy, something you've stumbled into. You don't get to dictate how it's handled." "Then let's speak about what legacy means," Rachel countered, drawing from the depths of Henry's wisdom. "It's not just about wealth or assets. It's about values, integrity, and the courage to protect the ones you love. If I'm part of this family, I deserve to contribute on my own terms." The words released a gust of air from Rachel's lungs, as if they had been trapped inside her for far too long. Seeing a flicker of confusion cross Karen's sharp features filled her with a rush of determination. This was uncharted territory for both of them, and Rachel was ready to explore it further. "Don't make the mistake of assuming you know your worth just because you've opened a few old boxes," Karen snapped, but Rachel could sense the defensive edge in her tone. Each sharp remark revealed their underlying vulnerability, a crack in Karen's armor that Rachel had been waiting to exploit. As she stood tall, a wave of inspiration flooded her mind. She could pull back the curtain on the family's history. Henry's writings would be an invaluable asset. There were truths buried within those pages that could reshape how they viewed their legacy. Each entry was a breadcrumb leading to more profound revelations. "Henry's writings aren't just memoirs, Karen. They're a framework for understanding who we are as a family," Rachel asserted, solidifying her authority. "If you're holding on to the past so tightly, how can you expect us to move forward? This trust, this fight, it can either divide us or lead to transformation. The choice is yours. I'm not backing down." The tension hung thick in the air between them. Karen's seething expression grew darker, yet Rachel saw the tiniest semblance of respect flicker in her eyes. Was she beginning to realize Rachel wasn't the pushover she had thought? Just then, a commotion from the hallway interrupted their standoff. Mark and Jess strolled in, their presence a welcome distraction amidst the brewing conflict. They caught the charged atmosphere instantly, exchanging glances of concern before stepping closer. "Everything okay here?" Jess asked, her voice edged with caution. Rachel quickly assessed the scene. She could feel the supportive energy radiating from her children. It bolstered her, reminding her of why she was fighting. Henry had taught her the importance of collaboration, and perhaps it was time to extend that lesson to her children. "Not yet," Rachel said, her voice softer but carrying the weight of resolve. "But it's getting there. We're discussing the future of our family and what that should really look like." Mark raised an eyebrow, cautiously observing the tension but clearly ready to back Rachel. "Sounds like this is important," he replied. "Can we help?" Rachel's heart swelled with gratitude. Their presence was grounding. "Yes, we can," she acknowledged, recalling Henry's words about unity. "The truth is that we need to redefine what our legacy means together. The whisper of our past is what guides us, but we can shape our future together." Karen looked between Rachel and her children, her facade beginning to crack under this unexpected alliance formed around transparent dialogue. Perhaps, amidst the emotional warfare, they could create a new pact, one founded not on ownership, but on shared responsibility. "You think this is a democracy?" Karen scoffed, but her tone lacked conviction. "No," Rachel replied firmly, the fire within her reigniting. "It's about respect. It's about love. And it's about understanding who we are as a family, beyond money." Karen visibly struggled to maintain her composure, the uncertainty now palpable. Rachel recognized that this was an opportunity to press further, to draw out the deeper truths Henry had illuminated in his writings. As they stood amid clashing ideals, Rachel knew the path ahead wasn't free from obstacles. The stakes were higher than they had ever been, and the conflict would require steady navigation through emotional minefields. Suddenly, Rachel's phone vibrated again. A new message flashed on the screen, a reminder from Jess. "You got this, Mom." The weight of it settled over Rachel like a warming embrace, reminding her that she wasn't alone. The fire was ignited. She was ready to face whatever came next. "Since we're all here," Rachel continued, fixing her gaze on Karen, "let's discuss the writing together. Each page may hold answers we didn't even know we were looking for." As she spoke, she hoped the words would transform the tension into a path forward. Would they manage to unravel the family dynamics that had kept them prisoners of their own pasts? Or would the deeper truths buried in Henry's writings simply complicate matters further? The room held its breath, an unspoken question hanging in the air. What would they uncover next? Rachel felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her as she faced Karen, her breath steady despite the lingering tension. This was not just about a family trust anymore. It was personal. It was about reclaiming her narrative, her voice in a space that had felt suffocating for far too long. "Let's start with honesty," Karen replied, crossing her arms defensively. "We all know you're not entirely invested in this family's history." "Perhaps you're right," Rachel admitted, searching for the right words. "But it's time I invest myself in understanding who we are, how we got here, and where we can go together. We owe it to ourselves." Jess and Mark exchanged glances, catching the intensity of their mother's tone. Rachel ran her fingers through her hair, channeling Henry's spirit, the determination he had instilled in her through his writings. She'd started this journey for herself, but it was expanding beyond personal motives. "I propose that we create a timeline," Rachel suggested, glancing at her children. "We can focus on the significant events that shaped our family. Each entry in Henry's writing can act as a pivotal moment we discuss openly. Let's learn from them, instead of hiding behind them." Karen raised an eyebrow, skepticism hanging in the air like an unwanted guest. "And you think that's going to change the power dynamics of our trust?" "It might, if we let it." Rachel's voice was steady. "Understanding our past can offer clarity. It can guide our decisions moving forward. Money doesn't define us, our choices do." "And you think you have all the answers?" Karen challenged, her tone dripping with disbelief. "No, I don't," Rachel replied, forcing herself to lock eyes with Karen, feeling the weight of her resolve. "But I know ignoring the truths that brought us here won't allow us to make the best decisions for the future." Mark stepped forward, his youthful energy igniting a shift in the room's atmosphere. "Mom's right. We can't move forward without knowing what we're moving from. I want to help unpack this." He looked directly at Karen, an earnestness in his gaze. "All of us need to feel included." Rachel heard the sincerity in Mark's voice, bolstering her own courage. Jess chimed in. "If we harness these writings together, we might find insights that could reshape not just our understanding of legacy, but how we relate to one another." The possibility of unity sparked a flicker of uncertainty in Karen's eyes. She glanced between Rachel and her children, and for a moment it seemed as if she weighed cooperation against isolation. Rachel took a deep breath. "I believe this family is capable of real growth, but that can only happen with honesty and vulnerability. What we uncover might be painful, but it could also liberate us from past burdens. We can redefine our legacy." Karen struggled to mask her turmoil. In that moment, Rachel could see the cracks in her armor deepen, not merely out of fear of losing control, but perhaps out of the burden of the legacy she clung to so fiercely. Rachel took a step forward, lifting her chin slightly. "I'm asking you to join us in this. Let's move beyond our differences. Our joint history deserves that much respect." The tension crackled, waiting for an answer. Karen's confrontation had begun to bend under the pressure of vulnerability Rachel had summoned. This was more than just a family meeting about a trust. It was an experiment in trust, between them and within themselves. Still, Rachel sensed Karen's reluctance, an emotional wall that refused to come down entirely. "What if we start with something simple?" Karen suggested, though the skepticism of her earlier tone lingered. "A family dinner. Let's talk casually. No tensions, just history," she added, almost reluctantly. Rachel's heart raced. It felt like a tentative olive branch, though the roots of strife still ran deep. "A dinner sounds perfect, but you need to agree to engage fully," Rachel replied firmly, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Fine," Karen whispered, the challenge lingering in her voice. In that fleeting moment, Rachel felt the tide starting to shift, challenges merging into cooperation. But would it be enough to confront the deeper truths hiding in Henry's writings? Would they peel back layers of resentment or merely scratch the surface? "Then it's settled," she said, a new resolve building within her. "We'll meet at my house tomorrow night, and from then on, we'll have to stay committed to exploring what family means beyond any trust." As they finalized their plans for the evening, Rachel felt a blend of anticipation and trepidation. Emotions bubbled beneath the surface, hinting that the path forward could lead not only to discovery, but also to potential clash. What lies within those pages could either unite them or unveil a rift that tore them apart for good. The real question hung heavy in the air. What secrets would their shared history reveal, and would they be prepared for the answers? Rachel spent the day in restless preparation, the weight of tomorrow's dinner pressing heavily on her mind. The sunlight filtering through her kitchen window seemed to highlight the chaos she believed her family had become. As she washed the dishes, she replayed moments from the previous evening, her heart racing again at the memory of Karen's skeptical eyes and the challenge of embracing vulnerability. Cooking had always been therapeutic for Rachel, a simple way to channel her turbulent emotions. Each slice of the vegetables felt like she was shedding layers of anxiety. She envisioned the family gathered around the table, the tantalizing aroma wrapping around them like a warmth they hadn't shared in years. Could this dinner become a turning point, or was it just a facade for underlying tensions? The sound of Jess and Mark bickering in the next room broke her concentration. Their quarrels felt both familiar and foreign, highlighting the chasm that had grown in their family dynamics. "What are you two even arguing about?" Rachel called out, half laughing at their sibling antics. Moments later, Jess stormed into the kitchen, her teenage frustration palpable. "Mark keeps insisting on bringing that obnoxious board game. He thinks we need something to break the ice, but we don't need it." Jess fumed, her brows knitting together. Rachel smiled faintly. "Sometimes, reducing tension requires unexpected distractions. Let him bring it." "Fine, but I'm not playing if it turns into another thing to argue over," Jess mumbled, arms crossed. Rachel watched her daughter retreat, uncertainty swirling within her. The dinner would be pivotal, but Rachel sensed that her children were struggling to see beyond their own conflicts. The question lingered. How could she ensure that this gathering wouldn't spiral into the past's weighty grievances? As evening approached, Rachel's heart thrummed loudly in her chest. She set the table, carefully arranging the family heirloom plates that carried histories of their own. Each piece was an echo of laughter, arguments, and heartfelt conversations, a reminder that they carried their past, even through simple acts. With the table set and the food ready, Rachel paced her living room, glancing at the clock frequently. Just as shadows began to stretch ominously in the dusk, Jess and Mark entered the house, increasingly aware of the gravity of the night ahead. "Are you ready for this?" Mark asked, his youthful bravado contradicting the apprehension in his eyes. "As ready as I'll ever be," Rachel replied, forcing a smile. "Remember, this is our opportunity to rewrite what family means for us. We might not have all the answers, but we can face these truths together." The doorbell rang, sending a jolt of nervous energy through her. She glanced at the children and saw similar hesitations mirrored in their faces. Taking a deep breath, Rachel opened the door to Karen's approach, recognizing the family resemblance even in her rigid stance. The tension between them was palpable as they exchanged greetings, their forced smiles revealing unspoken anxieties. As the evening unfolded, the warmth of the meal contrasted with the chilly silence that occasionally enveloped them. Rachel assumed leadership, encouraging discussions about mundane family memories before daring to delve into deeper topics. Yet every joke landed flat, and laughter felt like a humble offering overshadowed by the weight of history. Karen's initial reticence was beginning to ease. Rachel noticed her glancing at the family photos on the wall, her gaze lingering on a happier time when they were all at the beach together. "Do you remember that trip to Cape May?" she ventured, her voice softening. Rachel seized the moment. "Yes, I still remember how Henry took you to that ice cream shop. You were so mad he ate all of your mint chocolate chip." Unexpectedly, Karen chuckled, the tension thawing at least a degree. Yet before Rachel could seize this rare momentum, the conversation flickered back to the trust, clouding the mood. "Henry's writings can be taken out of context, you know," Karen said, her voice hardened again. Rachel braced herself for the ensuing clash, but each word felt like it heaved a weight into the air that needed to be addressed. How could they hope to redefine their legacy while still clinging to the fears that had held them captive? As the night unfolded, feelings both raw and unprocessed simmered beneath the surface, reminding Rachel that their journey towards understanding was just beginning. Only time would reveal whether they could confront the truths of their shared history or allow the shadows to loom over them. The question lingered as they navigated the fragile currents of connection and conflict. Would the revelations born from Henry's writings serve as bridges or barriers for them all? Rachel sensed the evening's unraveling threads. The laughter that had nearly crossed into the realm of genuine warmth now receded, replaced by caution and guarded words. Her heart sank slightly at the realization that the time spent tiptoeing around issues had yielded little progress. Yet amid the discomfort, Rachel felt a flicker of fierce determination. This gathering wasn't just another meal, it was a crucible, a chance to confront the lingering fractures within her family. Taking a sip of the spiced cider she had prepared, Rachel purged a deep breath and steered the topic northward again. "Let's be honest," she declared, challenging them all. "We've shared enough memories from the past, but what about our present? What do we want this family to look like moving forward?" The room fell silent, and Rachel's words danced in the air, heavy with implication. Mark exchanged nervous glances with Jess, while Karen studied her plate. Rachel pushed through that momentary discomfort, craving honesty, but wading through years of emotional debris. "Mom, easy for you to say," Jess replied, fidgeting with her hair. "You're not the one who—" She paused, her eyes darting to Karen. "Who has a problem trusting anyone. I mean, look what happened to you and Dad." That comment hit hard. Rachel couldn't argue. She knew that her own grief and unresolved anger were festering within her, but she refused to let her fears define this moment, or her children's lives anymore. She felt a surge of resolve, even as her stomach twisted. "Karen, do you think it's fully about what happened with Henry's writings?" Rachel pressed gently, focusing on the simmering tension. "Or is it more about fears we haven't openly addressed?" Karen seemed to bristle, but didn't dismiss the question. "It's not that simple, Rachel," she replied, frustration surfacing. "Those writings are part of a legacy that feels convoluted. Families shouldn't just forgive wrongs, especially ones that blur lines. That creates distrust." Rachel sensed the crack forming in Karen's facade. This was an opportunity to forge a new understanding. "What if we approach this differently?" she suggested. "Instead of labels and judgments, let's discuss the essence of what family means to each of us." "Easier said than done," Mark murmured, the skepticism heavy in his tone. "Maybe so," Rachel countered, her voice firm yet inviting. "But burying our feelings or managing everything with silence only leads to resentment. We have to grapple with the uncomfortable truths. They shape what we become." Jess picked at her food, her face a mask of discontent. "What's the point? This all sounds like a lot of talk without actions. It's easy to say we should make this family better. What do we actually do?" Rachel recognized a moment of reckoning and decided to seize it. "Let's create something tangible. Why don't we set a family project? Some sort of reinvention, like a tradition where we meet consistently. We could build something that celebrates us rather than our divisions. Karen narrowed her eyes, suspicious. Family projects are great, but they can devolve too. You know that. Rachel felt a twinge of frustration but tempered it. Then let's commit ourselves to respecting each other's vulnerabilities. Each week, we face parts of our past, but also share our hopes. We glean strength from one another until we are all equipped to carry the conversations that matter. Even if they're hard, the air around them felt charged with something electric, a nascent agreement waiting to break forth. Each face reflected doubt alongside a glimmer of cautious curiosity. It wasn't perfection, but it was a start. Before anyone could respond, there was a clattering sound from the living room, followed by an unexpected commotion. Jess shot a worried glance at Rachel. What was that? Rachel's pulse quickened, her thoughts racing. Whatever had broken the fragile moment felt ominous. Gripped with a sense of urgency, she stood to investigate, her instincts screaming that the night was far from over. Would this disturbance lead to revelations layered deep within their family? Or would it send them spiraling further apart? Rachel strode into the living room, heart pounding, and found Deb, her sister-in-law, struggling to pry open a heavy box that had toppled from the bookshelf. Papers were scattered everywhere, like fragments of a broken promise, their edges crumpling in the chaos. "What's going on?" Rachel asked, her voice sharper than intended, slicing through the noise and tension that already hung in the air. Deb looked up, her cheeks flushed with anxiety. "I was just trying to get something off the shelf. It seems I knocked over Dad's old files. He kept everything related to the trust." Rachel felt an immediate rush of familiar emotions as memories flooded back. Henry's writings, family secrets, and distrust all swirled in her mind. "The trust," she echoed, though the unease knotted tighter in her stomach. The trust was a topic usually cloaked in silence and avoidance. "What do you mean?" "Just everything," Deb muttered, falling silent as she gathered the sheets. "There are files here that I've never seen before. This could change everything." For a moment, Rachel felt her determination waver, submerged in the sea of uncertainty. She wanted to divert the attention back to her earlier plans for family reinvention, but something pivotal flickered in Deb's eyes. "What is it?" she pressed. Deb straightened, her hand gripping a document that bore their father's signature. The urgency in her movement caught Rachel's attention. "There are letters here, old instructions, and something about a sum of money." She licked her lips nervously, glancing back at Rachel. $500,000. Rachel's breath hitched. That number was an anchor dragging her thoughts to the depths of hidden motives and unresolved grievances. "What do you mean? What's it about?" "It says it's meant for the family, something to be used as a bridge for trust and understanding," Deb explained, voice trembling with hesitance. "But it also suggests there are conditions." "Conditions?" Rachel couldn't mask the confusion and dread coiling within her. The idea of money dictating their reconciliation felt wrong. It contradicted everything she was trying to achieve. Deb's brow furrowed. "If any of this is true, it means we have to confront not just the past, but each other. It's tied to those family gatherings Dad wanted us to have, written in his words." The resolve Rachel had felt earlier now sloshed between exhilaration and trepidation. Could the money be a blessing that brought them together, or a trap that fragmented them even further? Mark and Jess appeared at the doorway, curiosity piqued by the obvious tension radiating from their conversation. Their earlier discussion on family connection rushed back to Rachel. "We have to open all this up, explore its significance, to understand our legacies," she asserted, a new sense of authority shaping her words. "But what if it becomes a source of conflict?" Mark interjected, crossing his arms defensively as he weighed both sides. Rachel took a deep breath. "We'll shape how this affects us. It's what we've been talking about, isn't it? Facing the uncomfortable truths and making choices that reflect who we want to be." Jess frowned, clearly disillusioned by the complexities emerging from the ashes of their past. But if we start digging, what if we unearth things we aren't ready to handle? That's precisely the point, Rachel insisted, a newfound clarity piercing through her hesitation. We can no longer skirt around the tough stuff. This might be the catalyst that finally drives us to confront everything. We can either manage this trust or allow it to manage us. The room fell quiet, tension radiating around them as they absorbed Rachel's words. The stakes had been raised dramatically, and Rachel sensed the shifting tide of her family's course. This trust, instead of being a burden, could also symbolize a crucial pivot toward transparency if they deemed to take the plunge. Just as the silence became suffocating, Deb added quietly, "So, what do we do next?" Rachel's heart raced in wild anticipation. Each answer held the weight of consequence. But for the first time, she felt ready to embrace the murky waters of their shared history. They were not just a family now, they were the architects of their own future. As the day unfolded, the outlines of their destinies stood ready to emerge, but Rachel's mind spun with possibility and dare. Was their desire for healing potent enough to navigate the complexity ready to unfurl? The most profound confrontation lay just ahead, and she steeled herself, hoping they could forge a new legacy together. The moment of truth was coming, leaving Rachel to question whether they would rise or be swept under by tides of the past. Rachel's mind raced as she pieced together the implications of what Deb had uncovered. The mere mention of the trust invoked a familiar mix of anxiety and defiance, and though she felt momentum building in the room, uncertainty coiled within her like a tightly wound spring. She had spent years steering clear of family drama to chase her own dreams. Now, it seemed those aspirations were interwoven with a legacy she had tried to escape. "Let's read through the documents together, find out what conditions Dad placed on the trust," she said, taking a step toward Deb, who was sorting through the papers with a mix of apprehension and determination. "Maybe we can even learn something valuable about him, and us." The others gathered closer, forming a circle of tension and curiosity. As they began sifting through the chaos of words and phrases, Rachel felt a sense of purpose unfurling within her. This wasn't just about money. This was about unearthing the roots of their family tree, confronting the tangled history of their shared past. Every document they unfolded revealed more than just cold, hard facts. It reflected the man who had been their father, their elder, yet so often a distant figure in their lives. Questions began to swirl in Rachel's mind. How had he viewed the power of money? Was this trust intended as a genuine path to reconciliation, or merely a tool of manipulation? "Here," Deb said suddenly, pointing at a letter that appeared to have been written directly to them. "This one seems to be an explanation of his intentions." Rachel leaned in to read, her heart galloping as she absorbed the words. Their father had spoken of love, trust, and the importance of healing wounds. He wrote that the trust should only be accessed as a last resort, that it was meant to encourage us to connect rather than divide. Mark scoffed, the skepticism radiating from his posture. "That sounds nice, but what if we don't get along? What if the conditions end up tearing us apart instead? This is a lot of pressure." Rachel sighed, aware of the truth in his words. It was as if their father had neglected the reality of emotional scars, instead projecting an idyllic family narrative that had never fully existed. "Trust isn't built through money. It's built through honesty and vulnerability," Rachel countered, her voice steadier than she felt. "This might be a chance to redefine how we see each other. Let's not dismiss it before we've even tried." As they continued to delve deeper, Rachel struggled to keep her unyielding determination at the forefront. She began to notice the subtleties, overlapping sentiments in their father's words, revealing his struggle, the guilt that lingered beneath his hope. There was vulnerability there she hadn't expected to find. She realized that all the planning in her life, her career, her choices, was also shaped by his absence. The growing conviction within her felt like a tide shifting. If she could confront her family's legacy, perhaps she could redefine her own. The revelations hung thick in the air, each one piling on top of the last. As tensions shifted from the external to the internal, Rachel felt the distinction between family obligation and personal aspiration falter. She wanted to rise, not just for herself, but for them all. Yet beneath the anticipation of connection lay a shadow of fear. What if the emotions unleashed spiraled out of control? Was she truly ready to face the possibility of who they had been and what they could become? Can we first agree that secrets and fears only breed more secrets and fears? Rachel asked, her voice cutting through the uncertainty. This isn't about the money. It's a chance for us to rewrite our future. But it's going to take all of us. Deb nodded, and Rachel could see the same determination mirrored in her eyes. But Mark remained withdrawn, arms still crossed. What if we do this, and it ends badly? What if Dad's goodwill was misplaced? I'm ready to take that risk, Rachel replied, her heart racing even as she said it. We might gain something precious, a stronger bond, renewed understanding. But if we sweep this under the rug, it'll only fester. As silence enveloped them again, the weight of uncertainty lingered in the room, but Rachel felt a spark ignite within her. She couldn't turn back now. She had to see this through. The stakes were too high, and for the first time, she understood what her father had truly meant. The evening loomed heavy, and as they prepared to confront the past, Rachel's resolution solidified. Deep down, she knew that their choice would eventually lead to something transformative, or irrevocably tear them apart. In that moment, with realization dawning, Rachel pondered the intricate tapestry of decisions that awaited them. How intertwined were their fates, really? What hidden motivations might emerge in their shared journey? But the path ahead was shadowed with uncertainty. What would they ultimately choose to delve into? And would the revelations strengthen their bonds, or shatter them altogether? The night was about to unveil truths, a collision of past and future, and Rachel stood poised on the edge, ready to leap into the unknown. Rachel stood in the center of her living room, surrounded by her children and sister-in-law, an unexpected tension thickening the air. The documents they had uncovered held the potential to illuminate mutual understanding, or inflame existing wounds. Every heartbeat felt consequential as they prepared to confront the legacy that had shaped their lives. Let's bring truth into the light, Rachel asserted, her voice imbued with newfound confidence. These papers are not just about financial arrangements. They're about our family, our identity. Her resolve swelled with purpose, spurred by the belief that transparency could be their pathway to healing. We have to engage with what's right here before us. Mark shifted uneasily, arms crossed, embodying unspoken doubts. His skepticism mirrored Rachel's own anxieties, reverberating in the silence that filled the room. But what if we uncover things we're not prepared for? He challenged. Things that could drive us apart? Driving us apart is precisely what we've been doing for far too long, Rachel responded, meeting her son's gaze with steady resolve. If we ignore this chance, we risk perpetuating a cycle of distrust. We owe it to ourselves to confront these emotions. Jess watched Rachel with a mixture of admiration and uncertainty, the complexity of their shared history reflected in her eyes. What if we confront the heavy stuff, and it leads to more hurt? She asked quietly, vulnerable uncertainty peeking through her guarded demeanor. Rachel's heart raced, feeling the weight of the moment settling over them. Vulnerability could be their greatest strength, she realized. The only way to deal with hurt is to face it. We need to discover who we truly are, not just in relation to Henry, but as individuals. Let's not let the past dictate our future. A flicker of recognition sparked in Mark's eyes, an acknowledgement that perhaps this journey was necessary. I guess we do need to dive into these emotions together, he conceded. As they began to read the letters and documents aloud, a palpable energy shifted in the room. Each revelation opened new dialogues. Insights reminiscent of the conversations they'd never had emerged like blooms from cracked concrete. As Henry's words fell into place, Rachel felt an unlikely connection weaving through their shared vulnerabilities. This was not about the trust itself, but the shared legacy they could forge moving forward. "Listen to this," Deb read from a letter, her voice shaking slightly. "Money is only a tool to ease suffering, but true wealth is found in the connections we nurture with honesty and love." Is he telling us he wanted reconciliation more than anything? Jess reflected, the gravity of the words echoing her earlier frustrations. "Maybe so," Rachel responded, an idea blossoming in her mind. "He wanted us to fight for each other, not against one another. We have an opportunity to redefine what family means." Enthusiasm rippled beneath the surface, pushing the haze of distrust aside. The fragile threads of connection began to tighten as each family member slowly shared their fears and hopeful visions for reconciliation. They discussed how past grievances had shaped their interactions, illuminating long-buried emotions and encouraging the vulnerable exchange Rachel had long envisioned. Through hard honesty, Rachel witnessed the faces around her soften, barriers that had long stood unchallenged, beginning to yield to a burgeoning empathy. "If we trust one another to be authentic," Rachel urged, "it'll break the hold our past has on us." Mark nodded, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "I guess we need to decide what kind of family we want to be, one guided by open communication." With every shared recollection, Rachel marveled at the transformation taking root. She saw fears assuaged, love reignited in its many forms, glimmers of clarity illuminating their conversations. They began charting pathways to meetings, fostering understanding with each subsequent gathering. But amid the breakthrough, Rachel recognized the urgency of honoring Henry's intentions. It wasn't merely about confronting the past. It was about seizing the opportunity to create a legacy for her children, a life intertwined with resilience and strength. Buried beneath the complexity of their circumstances lay a commitment to finding light in the shadows. As the sun dipped below the horizon, turning the walls of their home golden, Rachel felt a sense of release wash over her. This dinner was more than just a meal. It was a testament to their growth and willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. "Let's forge a family tradition, a standing dinner every month where we come together to share our truths," Rachel proposed, vision crystallizing within her. "Instead of succumbing to division and silence, we'll build a framework of love." And as heads nodded in agreement, Rachel felt a transcendence swell within her. She had made the conscious choice to steer her family toward unity. In that moment, she understood. They had not only salvaged the evening, they had ignited hope. Fast-forwarding through time, Rachel stood at the forefront of her family's transformation. No longer encumbered by fear, she radiated resolve, solidified in her newfound position. It was one defined not by a legacy dictated through wealth, but by a commitment to integrity, open dialogue, and authentic connection. Days turned to weeks, and the McAllister family began to thrive as they further engaged in the legacy Rachel helped shape. Confrontations spurred healing, principles transformed into commitments, and resentment gave way to mutual respect. In the months that followed, Rachel received recognition within her community for her leadership, guiding family engagements that fostered broader connections beyond the confines of her own household. Her role as a devoted mother, caring nurse, and now resilient family leader showcased her growth and fulfillment. She no longer felt beholden to the past, having established her own name and reputation that blended poignantly with the McAllister legacy. With each united dinner, they not only honored their shared history, but paved a pathway to the future defined by collaboration. Rachel reveled in the knowledge she had not merely achieved a family legacy through finances, but through love, understanding, and invaluable connections forged in vulnerability. It was her moment, her triumph, and as she gazed at her children gathered around the table, the laughter filling their home, she knew she had finally conquered the shadows that once threatened to engulf her family's future. And as Rachel nestled contentedly in that moment, her journey solidified, brave, fulfilled, and at peace with the legacy she had created. Now, it's your turn. Join Rachel in her transformative journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. You need to be heard. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Your engagement matters.